Hello, my name is Carlos Montoya. I'm 15 years old and I'm from 8C. Today I'm going to be answering the question, is nothing impossible? So, since the beginning of language, we have heard the word impossible several times. In books, movies, magazines, friends, family, and sometimes even ourselves. But that's what usually pushes us further. Why do I say this? Because everything that has been said to be impossible has been proved wrong. For example, sailing on a boat, exploring the sea, climbing the highest mountain, and even splitting the atom. And those have been probably the biggest accomplishments that we have done in the past hundreds of years. But we also have to talk about the small accomplishments, the ones that people barely notice. For example, the television. When Charles Francis Jenkins and Philo Farnsworth presented the idea of television, people said, that's not going to work. That's impossible. But yet, they did that and they created one of the greatest things ever, basically. There's also the other example with it, which is Steve Jobs. People said that creating a music playing device or beating IBM with the Apple II would be impossible. But yet, he did both things, and they're basically one of his greatest accomplishments. So I'm going to tell you guys about a personal experience. It was about 10 years ago, and I came back from home and I was crying and crying on how I couldn't read and my friends could. And my parents got really worried about me and they said, why can't this kid read? He must have a problem. So they decided to send me to a psychologist to see what's wrong with me. So once they sent me, they asked me to read some things, but I just couldn't. And they said, this kid has dyslexia. He cannot read. It's basically impossible. So about 2 months later, it was my birthday, and I asked for a lot of books so I could practice. And all my family members brought me a book, and I was reading and practicing. Then they sent me to the psychologist again, and I could read, and I was reading fine. But then they asked me, could you write us what you read? But I couldn't write. And they said, this kid has dysgraphia. He cannot write, and it's basically impossible. So I started trying, and I was practicing every day. And then I went to school, and I just was lacking. My Spanish teacher probably failed me 2 or 3 times, but I just kept on going and trying. And about a year later, I was able to write like any other person. So finally, I'm going to talk about something that I can relate with this story. And it is Alexander the Great, probably the greatest conqueror in history, conquered over half of Europe, created the catapult and the siege tower, which were probably the greatest inventions of that time. And he said, nothing is impossible to him who will try. And I can relate this to my story because the only thing that I did was try. I didn't do anything else. And I think that the only way to make things possible is by trying. Thank you.